Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to What's on the Playlist today. Today I want to talk about Where Have All the Merrymakers Gone by Harvey Danger, an image of which you will see here. So, Harvey Danger was an alternative rock band formed in the early 90s. A couple guys went to Washington University together, worked in the school newspaper together. Thought it'd be fun to do a band. Played together for a year or so, got some other, as a duo, got some other guys in. They got the name Harvey Danger from actually some graffiti on the on like the office walls. But like I said, played together for a while. Toured around, played in local clubs and stuff. They would record short, like 6-song demo tapes that they would play at their sell at their shows for like $3 a pop. Didn't really have a lot of excuse me, didn't have a lot of success getting a record deal for a little while. And they did finally get one from London Records, which has offices in obviously London and Canada, and recorded Where Have All the Merrymakers Gone? Nothing too spectacular about the making of the record. The guys had been playing for a couple of years. And when it was released, it got some decent play on the college radio stations, but didn't really take off. So, like, the band wasn't sure what they were going to do. The album sold, but wasn't really selling well. And they decided to take a month's vacation. And right before that, one of the band members handed a copy of the album off to a local DJ, a DJ who worked for a Seattle radio station. The guy liked it, played it on the air. Within a couple of weeks, it was like their most requested. I think he played Flagpole Sitta, which I think was the most one of the most requested songs on the air at the time. So, band came back from vacation. They re-released the album, released Flagpole Sitta as a single, and the band kind of took off from there. The band wanted to release the first song of the album, Carlotta Valdez. They wanted that to be their next single. The record label disagreed and had them choose, I think, Private Helicopter, which did not do as well. And having listened to the album, I agree with them. I think Carlotta Valdez would have done much better as a singer from the album. As far as the album itself goes, it's an alternative band from the early to mid 90s. That pretty much is just a good way to describe them. The title song, well, not the title, but the first song of the album, Carlotta Valdez, is a lot more hardcore and punkish. It has that harder edge to it, and it definitely shows like a punk rock roots to it. The other songs are a bit more slow paced and mellow. And then of course there's Flagpole Sitta. The title of the song, Flagpole Sitta, is like a slang term, or a variation of flagpole sitter. The flagpole sitting was a fad back in the 1920s and 30s. 1920s. It kind of ended because of the Depression, but people would basically sit on flagpoles as like a publicity stunt. They would see how long they could stay up there. I think it was started by some guy. I think it was done as a dare, and he stayed up there for like 7 or 8 hours, several hours at least. And then once it got known, people started trying to beat his record. And then he finally came back and stayed up there for like 30 days, something like that. And then someone almost immediately broke his record, and it was about making the record. But it also became a term after this fad. It became a term for people who would kind of take a stand but not do anything. What are you doing? People who are very passive, and they would go through the motions of wanting to do something important but never actually really did anything. Guys would sit around. So a flagpole sitter is someone who, basically someone who is very ambivalent and sits around and doesn't accomplish anything, gets nothing done. So And the song itself, which is their one big single from the album, one big hit from the album, has a lot of the same. It's a song about wanting to make a statement, wanting to be important, but kind of being stuck in the humdrum and the humdrum grind of life. One of the lyrics in the song is, "I've been around the world and only stupid people are breeding." Uh, the song is full of lines like that. The other thing too is that this song has a very different tempo from the rest of the album. Like I said, Carlota Valdez has a much harder, stronger tempo. This is a bit more laid back, but still very, very punchy and very tempo driven. And lyrically, it's a bit different as well, because the words of the song are really beat to the tempo. Been around the world and found the only stupid people are breeding. The song is really, the lyrics are really built and forced around the tempo. And I find of other songs, because I did listen through the album before talking about this, I found that the lyrics were actually really well done. They're very, very evocative. So what was the one lyric? There's one lyric that really sticks with me. I'm trying to phrase it properly in my head. My fingertips have memories. I can't forget the curves of your body. And aside from the erotic connotations, I found that phrasing, "my fingertips have memories," and I'm reminded of in my childhood, there was like a chair, a wooden chair that had like a little whorl carved into like the arm, like the hand where your hand rests and the arm rests. A little whorl was carved into the wood, and I can remember running my thumb over over the dents of the carvings in the wood, and I can feel it under my thumb. I can feel that curve and the dents in the wood under my fingertips. If I think about it, I can do that. So that phrase, "my fingertips have memories. I can't forget the curves of your body." Like I said, beyond the sexual connotations of it, I found that phrase to for me was really evocative, and very clever phrasing too. And I found that there are multiple lyrics that don't hit me quite as hard. I don't find them quite as evocative personally for me, but I found a lot of the lyrics for the song in the song Flagpole Sitta are similarly very cleverly written. Too many L's and Y's in that phrasing, but so lyrically, I really, really did enjoy the song. Like I said, "been around the world, only stupid people are breeding." Another lyric is, they put me in the hospital, you had them commit me. You told them all I was crazy. They cut off my legs, now I'm an amputee. It's full of interesting, lyrics that, in spite of the upbeat tempo of the song, are kind of dark and depressing. So, and very, very cynical, a very cynical song. There's also something I almost forgotten about that I wanted to mention. There's a slower phrasing in the verse, a slower verse that says, "I want to pierce my tongue. It doesn't hurt. It feels fine." And the lead singer, after the song came out and became popular, the lead singer was approached by people who would show him their tongue piercings and say they did it because of the song. And he was just like, you don't get it. The entire song was about people doing stupid things, or people wanting to do important things and doing stupid things instead. It's like, that's not what the song was about. He was so disappointed. I can kind of imagine being in that situation where you're trying to give a message and people take it the wrong way. We've all done that. We've all said something that we intended to be taken one way, and someone took it a different way. So, but I did want to mention that. Beyond that, the album itself wasn't more than a splash in the pond, and I think some of that was because, as decent as I think this album is, they didn't really do anything new to kind of elevate themselves. They got noticed, but the rest of the album is kind of like standard alternative rock. Now, that's not a criticism. It's a good album. It's actually, for a debut album, it's really tight and polished. Granted, by the time the album came out, they'd been playing together for 5 or 6 years, so you can, good for them. They've, got a polished sound after that much time together. But I mean, I can name other artists, and I'm sure other people who listen to a lot of music, especially music that doesn't get a lot of radio play, who can name bands that, or artists that, similarly, they're good, but because they didn't do anything that got them any real attention, they just didn't go anywhere. It's not a question of their talent or their ability or their skill. Nothing just really grabbed the public's attention. This is a good, solid band. It's a good, solid album. But like I said, I think I just kind of got lost in the noise of the mid-90s alternative rock scene. They got their one shot, and, it was a huge hit at the time, but it was kind of a one-hit wonder for them, which I think is a shame. Like I said, they're talented. They were good. If you like a good alternative music, this is a good album. But, for some reason, it just didn't catch on beyond the initial song of Flagpole Sitta. But Flagpole Sitta and Carlotta Valdez, to me, are my two favorite songs on the album. And the other stuff is solid too. Just those are the two that really stick out to me. They're also, they also have a more distinct sound than the rest of the album. The rest of the album is very similar in sound. It's not, again, not a criticism, not a bad thing. But there's some standout points here and there, but these are the two most different songs on the album. The rest of them are kind of like, part of the band's catalog, and these are the two that really kind of push to the fore and stand out. So, stay. So, that's my take on this album. I would recommend you listen to it if you like alternative music. So, as always, thanks for watching. As always, my stuff is crap. And until next time, good hunting.